Hello and welcome to Testimonies with T. I'm your host, Tia Costell, and today I'm here with Luke.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so talk to me. Tell me what you do and who you are.
So, my name's Luke again. I'm 25 years old. What I do is I work in fashion basically, so I have a clothing business and also a wholesale manufacturing company as well. So
Wow.
a lot of the work that I do is predominantly based with working with other brands in the UK, music artists like Get, for example.
Wow.
Basically just connecting with people to essentially bring their designs to life. I've been doing that for about almost 8 years now, to be honest.
Wow.
I started quite young, so
Wow.
it's been an incredible journey.
Yeah.
I also work predominantly with homeless people, providing clothing for them,
Wow.
obviously through my company as well.
Mhm.
And I just think everything that I want to do in life essentially is
Yeah.
all about, I guess, giving back to people in the community. The Bible is about people being unclothed, hungry, no water. And it's just basically all about obviously supporting people that obviously need help in those various different situations. So,
Yeah. Wow, amazing. So what first inspired the whole fashion thing?
It would probably be my mum, to be honest. I mean, my mum was very heavily focused in being like a seamstress, essentially. So she used to make dresses and clothes for people,
Yeah.
in a very quick time. And from that, I kind of just picked up certain things when it comes to making clothes,
Okay.
which kind of inspired my passion, I guess, from the start with regards to obviously fashion. And then for myself personally, I'd say that, I was just messing about with the computer a couple of times, making designs here and there, drawing things. Yeah. And it got to a point where I thought, what, I want to kind of slap this on a t-shirt or on a hoodie. So I was making clothes for myself in college. And then it got to a point where people were like, oh, where'd you get that from? Can I buy it?
Yeah, wow.
So it wasn't really supposed to be a business at the start, but it kind of progressed into people wanting certain things that I was selling. And that's how I started Centurion. But yeah, it's a bit of an incredible story, to be fair, because I went through so many issues with regards to my clothing brands, which basically led me to a position where I could understand a lot of things that other clothing brands have, which obviously enabled me to help me with my own business as a manufacturer, supplying to clothing brands, understanding that, they've gone through certain things in their life.
Yeah.
As a brand owner, which I've had to experience, unfortunately, with my brands. But without me going through those trials and I guess the wilderness, I wouldn't have been able to obviously understand the position that they were in. But yeah, that's kind of just a...
Wow, amazing. And it seems like there's so many parts to it as well.
Yeah.
Because obviously you're not just being that like manufacturer and that. Yeah. You've also got your own brand. Yeah. And also like doing this scheme with helping the homeless, which is amazing.
Exactly.
Busy man.
Busy man indeed, yeah.
So obviously that was a bit of like where we are now in life. Let's take it back to your upbringing, what that kind of looked like.
Yeah. So I've grown up a youngest out of 3 sisters.
Okay.
So as you can imagine, the household is very, I say, noisy. I'm just grateful I survived this long, to be honest. But yeah, I'm grateful for the fact that I obviously grew up with 2 parents. I think it's such a blessing to have both parents in your life. We obviously all know the effects of maybe not having a father in life, unfortunately. So I'm very, very blessed and grateful for the fact that my upbringing has been secure to some extent.
Yeah, a unit.
Although every family has issues and so forth, I'm just grateful for a lot of the earlier starts in my life, if that makes sense. Yeah, growing up, I grew up as an SDA, Seventh-day Adventist Christian. So my parents were, till about 15 years old, my parents were very, very strict about church, how I represented myself as a person, not just within church, but outside of church. I'm also grateful for the fact that I've had such values installed into my own personal life to the point where, my own sort of conscience is so socially aware, if that makes sense, when it comes towards how I behave around people, how I have respect for other people, if that makes sense. Growing up as a child, it's fairly reserved, because I spent a lot of time obviously by myself, obviously sisters being together. I spent a lot of time by myself. My dad always worked, so I was just exploring things on my own, and I think that's what's given me such a creative ability, because I was exploring things on my own to the point where I was trial and error with different things.
Yeah, always trying to figure it out.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
As I was saying, growing up as a Christian at SDA, Seventh-day Adventist. Going to church every Saturday, wearing a suit at the age of 5. So I don't think I fully understood who God was until I was probably about 16 years old.
So before that, was it just kind of something you did as a family?
Yeah, so obviously in a strong Caribbean household, if you're going to tell your parents you're not going to church, like, that's probably the last day you're probably going to on the
It's war.
So yeah, I was going with the flow. Like I was saying, like when I turned about 15, 16, is when I firstly like really started to understand who God was, and his role in the people's lives. Basically, I got baptized at 18. I feel as though my life started from that point. When it comes towards hardships, in that sense, because I was really trying to figure out, what it is like to be a Christian in a world full of people who are from different walks in their life, different backgrounds, different beliefs. But yeah, up until about 18, I had planned to go to uni. I was going to study dentistry.
Wow.
I didn't do it because it was 5 years.
Wow, yeah, that's a long degree.
Very long degree.
But before you were thinking about uni, what was kind of like school like growing up for you?
School was, I'll be honest, I didn't enjoy it at all whatsoever. I spent a lot of my time trying to enjoy it, trying to like enjoy the fact that I have to be at school. Although I didn't do too bad, but not too good in school academically, I just hated the fact that I had to always be in class, confined in the classroom, learning literally in the same way in every single lesson. There wasn't really anything that was engaging enough for me to really learn in the way that I wanted to learn, so creatively.
Yeah, you felt unstimulated.
Yeah, and I think like if you're experiencing that so often, you basically switch off a lot. I think that's what happened to me during school. So yeah, I've always had a negative sort of feel towards it. Came away with good grades, and then obviously I moved on to college after that to do my A-levels.
What did you study?
So I was going to study physics, chemistry, biology.
Wow, for someone that didn't really like school or the way it was taught, to have probably like some of the most academic, like that's crazy.
Yeah, that was a plan, obviously, to become a dentist. So those are the main subjects that
you needed.
But I basically did a full 360. Ended up going to do an apprenticeship in sales. So I was working for a property company where they were working with people to sell their houses, investors. In my first 3 months of that apprenticeship, they must have thought that I was good enough to move to an investment team, which is what I was promoted to. And then from there, I've just been learning to work and build relationships with clients, basically, and capitalizing on those relationships. And literally since that point onwards, I've always had a role that has kind of matched up with that. Does that make sense? So it can only be God.
It was your calling.
Yeah, to some extent. Life during school, didn't really like it, but I did what I needed to do. Obviously having parents.
To get through.
Having parents who are supportive, but then there's a lot of pressure as well.
Did you have a close relationship with your parents?
Very close relationship, but it wasn't like, it was close, but then we wouldn't speak about things that were sensitive. If that makes sense. So it's close enough with certain things, but with everything else, it's almost like there's a bit of a standoff.
Yes, no one would really talk about their emotions.
And I think that affected me in my adult life because there was situations that I was experiencing, and then my parents were trying to support. But I was like, I've never really had this before. Like, this feels weird. Why are you not all of a sudden doing it? You know what I mean? So, but yeah, anyway, younger life, school life was pretty cool to learn.
Nice.
Making good friendships with people.
Yeah, so you had a good, like, solid friendships growing up.
Which I still have to this day.
Nice.
I think school is obviously an amazing opportunity to learn something academically, but then also have like real life experience with building relationships with people, having those relationships grow into adult life as well. I think a lot of learning takes place during that period of time in life, and you really find out who you are to some extent as well.
Yeah, for sure. So then, obviously, you said at 16, was it, that you first then, like, started taking God seriously? Yeah. So what happened during that time for you to actually then, I guess, make the switch?
Yeah, so I went to a college called the Henry College, which is just outside of Berkshire.
Okay.
Basically, the college had people coming from parts of London, parts of like Wickham, Reading, everywhere basically.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a mixed bag when it comes towards characters and people. And I think during that period of time, I got involved in certain things that I may not have probably shouldn't have been involved in.
Right.
Not for a long period of time, but yeah, that kind of led to, I guess, beef within that college, if that makes sense.
Right.
And there was a lot of experiences where like my life was at risk at
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think when I came close to a situation, I think that's when I really thought like, wow, God really has my back, because this could have gone really, really left.
Right.
And it didn't. So yeah, I think the turning point was me understanding that, you know, my life has value to at least someone, being God. Even though it may not feel like it does to anyone else around me, but to God, I definitely know that He obviously values my life a lot. Obviously, from that point onwards, getting baptized at 18, that's when things kind of really kicked off for me.
But what happened within those like 2 years? Because it was like 2 years from getting baptized to getting baptized, from the moment that you were like, okay, someone cares for me. What was kind of like those 2 years kind of look like? Was it a fact of like, then church looked completely different for you? Or
I think it was personal devotion. So I tried really hard to kind of build a relationship with God myself personally, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't really go through too much like devotion for my baptism, because I was trying to do that personally myself. But yeah, like I was saying, obviously I was adopting the same sort of method I had when I was a child, through trial and error, trying to understand things myself personally.
Yeah, for yourself,
If I got it wrong, then I would dive deeper or find an explanation on YouTube or something about the Bible. Which for me was about that spiritual growth. But comparing it to where I am now, it wasn't the same amount of like intensity of growth, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I was still learning very basic things about obviously being a believer of Christ, following Christ, if that makes sense. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, those 2 years was just trial and error, dipping in and out of, you know, my boys, and then obviously church and so forth. So kind of finding who I am and what I want to stand for, basically. And by the time I was 18, I had made that decision, basically.
Yeah, that actually, it was time to go all in.
Yeah.
Gone all in, you've got baptized.
Yeah.
What did life look like after that?
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. It was a very short notice baptism.
Okay.
So I didn't want to feel pressure when it came towards being baptized.
Yeah, of course.
I wanted to be very, very sure about it at the time. So yeah, how I felt afterwards was obviously feeling brand new, as you do.
Yeah.
Literally within like 2 months, things were going wrong in my life. Stuff at work was happening, stuff in my family. Just problems like it, you know, when you're like under attack and there's like no reason why it's
spiritual warfare.
Basically.
Yeah.
And I think that I've had a lot of that in my life for some reason. But I'll obviously explain in a bit more depth with regards to my own personal life right now. But yeah, after baptism, it was just about really understanding, you know, I've got something to stand for, and what I'm experiencing, other people need to experience the same sort of enlightenment, as they say.
Yeah.
An incredible experience before and after.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to just maintain that experience, or that feeling, I guess.
So did your friendships change moving forward from that?
Yeah. So like a lot of my friends obviously grew up with me. Some of them were SDA. Some of them are now different religions.
Yeah.
So friendships and dynamics changed quite a bit, as they should do to some extent. I mean, I wasn't casting judgment on people. Of course. Like that.
But naturally it evolves.
Yeah. Naturally you disassociate yourself from certain people because you're not about their own, basically.
For sure.
So there was a lot of that taking place. But it wasn't really a case of me like actively doing it. It was kind of just happening. In front of me. Yeah. There's times where I was trying to like reconnect with people, and it was feeling as if, you know, people are obviously not including me in certain things, but it's just a case of God isolating me. Yeah. During that period of time, basically.
To refine you.
More or less. And because He's done that, like, it gave me a new outlook on where He was taking me. It was obviously to start my business when I was 18. Okay. If I had not obviously broke with certain people, I would be here today for sure. So yeah, extremely grateful.
Wow. So then you've started the business, and as you were saying before, was that because people started asking for?
Yeah. So I've always kind of been interested in fashion. Obviously making stuff myself personally, and then people wanting to have it. But just evaluating fashion in general, when I was starting out, there was a lot of brands that represent whole boxing that are about that are very heavily into like heavy metal. So I like the t-shirt, but obviously I don't mess with heavy metal and rock.
Yeah.
So I thought, let me try and put a spin on this by adding biblical concepts, but I then have the same heavy metal vibe, if that makes sense. So I was slapping like Moses on a t-shirt, Distressed, slapping stuff like Noah's Ark on there as well.
Wow.
Giving it the same vibe, but obviously biblical concepts.
Yes, yes.
And then on my website, I would have an explanation of like the story broken down, what it means.
Wow.
So I used to name my seasons after aspects of the Bible. So I would have the season called the Ark.
Wow.
Kingdom of Dreams, obviously Joseph. And then within those seasons and collections, I was from those particular stories in the Bible explained in t-shirts. For example, I had a dove on a t-shirt flying over the olive branch, was to represent Noah's Ark. And then I would just explain obviously the story itself. The meaning behind my brand itself, it's called Centurion. See, about the centurion in the Bible who had faith in Jesus to be able to heal his servant. And obviously through my brands, my sort of goal is to try and provide some form of healing to people through fashion.
Wow.
Whether it's directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically what I'm about.
Wow, that's amazing. So that's what started when you were 18. When you were starting with the brand, was it easy process?
To start off with, yeah, because you've just got so many ideas just flowing, so you kind of just want to get everything on paper.
Yeah.
But so many stories regarding like issues that I've had running a fashion brand. One thing I wasn't prepared for is just how much, support there wasn't. How much there was a lack of support. So you would start a clothing brand, right? And then you're immediately expecting to have like 10 sales a day or something. But really and truly, you start off with about 10 sales for like the next 3 months, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
So you're buying loads of bulk up front, and then you have all this stock sitting around. You spend like $2,000 on stock for your first drop.
Yeah.
And you only sell 3 t-shirts. So mentally, I was going through a lot because I was thinking, God, you called me to do this. Why on earth isn't it kicking off?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think throughout my whole journey of that brand, I was kind of changing the way I thought about God giving me a purpose, if that makes sense. Although He has a purpose for you,
yeah,
the results and you achieving that purpose is not also immediate at the same time.
Or in the way that you think.
Or in the way that you think. I was watching a video from this guy who was basically just saying that God will tell you the beginning and the end, but He won't tell you what's happening in the middle. Because if He was going to tell us, obviously it'd be a point of this not understanding the full journey and kind of basically sacrificing what He has for us because of how hard the journey would be. And I definitely agree with that.
100%.
For sure.
Yeah. Or we wouldn't then need Him or rely on Him as much.
Yeah, exactly.
Because actually we know the whole plan.
For sure. For sure.
Know?
I mean, all glory has to go to God in whatever you do, basically. So yeah, as obviously I'm continuing this brand. I've now hit the 2-year mark.
Okay.
1 to 2 year mark. Still having issues, not kicking off how I wanted to do. It would basically kick off in different spells, so I'd have loads of orders when I do a drop. Then it would just die off quite a bit. And then I was just having that same process consistently every single year.
So were you working at the same time as having the brand?
Yeah, working at the same time, trying to manage a brand, thinking that God's trying to make me some sort of millionaire whilst running a brand. But for me, obviously during that time, I was understanding it's not about the money whatsoever. It's about the message I'm trying to portray.
For sure.
Brand. So working at the same time. The funny thing is, every single job that I've had has taught me something about business that I've needed at that specific time. So I've started off with sales, customer service, doing an apprenticeship in that. So that taught me obviously how to connect with customers, how to manage them, how to make a sale. And then from that, I moved to another company where I was dealing with manufacturing. So obviously now being a manufacturer now, I've learned everything that I need to know about being a manufacturer, how to price products, how to connect with customers, how to run a warehouse. Yeah,
He's already been preparing you for each stage.
More or less. And the most recent job I had was working in software. At the moment, I'm working on an app with a couple of developers of mine.
Wow.
To basically allow the industry to be a bit more streamlined, if that makes sense. So at the moment, people buy a lot of stock up front. I don't have the money to basically start a clothing brand without spending loads and loads of money.
Yeah.
But the idea for my brand is having very small minimum order value of one piece. They can create their orders online. ordering it directly through the website without having to pay so much upfront. So
Yeah,
just trying to be a bit more sustainable in terms of fast fashion. Unfortunately, the society that we live in, everything is so fast fashion, fast food, microwaves, air fryers. Everything's kind of geared towards having something immediately.
For sure.
And it's crazy to live in a society like that, because everything that God has produced and created is literally the opposite. Like, there's always a process. So when you plant the seed, there's a process. It's not an immediate flower. When you have a baby, there's a process. It's 9 months. But if our minds are geared towards instant gratification, instant, immediate results, when it comes towards God giving us a purpose for our lives, we're going to always fall short of the glory to some extent, because we're expecting something to happen immediately. We push ourselves down because we're not seeing results straight away. But everything that God creates, including our purposes, also has a purpose as well. And I've been learning that as well, to just really trust in His plan, not my own.
So, yeah, He's really been, for each step of the way, been preparing you to where you are.
Yeah.
So then, where did the warehouse and manufacturing, did that come with starting the brand from the beginning, or?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously during my time of having a business, I was going through so many issues with regards to supply. COVID hit, and there was literally no suppliers in the UK.
Wow.
So I'm thinking to myself, I can't be the only person going through this. Surely everyone else, every other brand is experiencing some issue with regards to manufacturing and supply. So I thought, why not create a business that helps other people who are facing similar challenges. Little did I know, the whole 5 years before, God been preparing me for the issues that other brands have, like designing clothing, how to do a tech pack, how to order, pricing, all of that I had patterned before, basically.
Wow.
To the point where I can now set up a business that helps other companies
do the same thing.
Do the same thing.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's just preparing me. But I think when it comes towards God and your purpose, if you look at Joseph, for example, I always feel like God will never show you your true purpose until He finishes working on your character.
Yeah, 100%.
And until you get to that point, you won't have your kingdom moment like Joseph. So,
for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. You set up the manufacturing, and obviously you were prepared for it, and but I'm guessing it wasn't all smooth sailing. What did that
Not
look
at all.
like?
Not at all. The first month was crazy. This is how I knew that God was basically in it. I basically started with no capital.
Okay. Wow.
I made my first sale on day 2,
Wow.
which was for a bulk unit.
Wow.
That whole month is probably, in terms of business, I think any enterprise that I've ever had, in that month alone, I've made more than I had anywhere else, basically.
Wow.
So I really felt like God was really pushing me to really move into that direction, basically. But as you were saying, it wasn't smooth sailing whatsoever. I mean, there was various issues when it came towards obviously running the manufacturing company, obviously working with suppliers, regulations in the UK, making sure that I'm sustainable and so forth. It was really difficult. So by about month 2, 3, things were really flying. I was seeing figures that I've never seen before, which was good. And it got to a point, month 8, 9, things just literally started to go south, more or less.
Wow.
And it wasn't even just south with my business, my own life as well. So,
so what happened during that time?
Yeah, I mean, so much was happening. I mean, I was in a relationship which was quite draining. Yeah. In terms of obviously how it came about, obviously being with someone obviously that was of faith, not being equally yoked, came with problems in itself.
Yeah.
It got to a point where things were really toxic, if that makes sense.
For sure.
I just kept on losing in so many different areas of my life. Obviously starting with my business, certain things, for example. This is how I know that it was a spiritual attack.
Yeah.
One day my website just stopped taking orders. No one could make payments online.
Wow.
Things were happening with my bank. My bank got closed. Orders weren't turning up. I had to refund people.
Wow.
And then it was just escalating on top of that. So it was basically just tenfolding itself. So I had backlogs of orders that I had to get shipped out. They weren't getting shipped out on time, so I had to refund those customers and ship it out. So I was just losing money constantly.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, there's stuff happening in the family. She was giving birth, and there was a bit of complications with regards to that.
Oh gosh. Is she okay then?
Yeah, she's all good.
Thank God.
Baby number 2 on the way as well. So, and then with regards to my relationship at the time, there was a lot happening.
Can we just talk about that, if you don't mind, actually?
Sure.
Because I feel like that verse is such a prominent verse that is spoken about a lot in kingdom relationships, unequally yoked. What would you say was the major things that you could see that were meaning that you weren't equally yoked?
So, I think the main sort of point that kind of stuck out was like values aligning, basically. And I'm someone that usually, if my values aren't aligning, then I'm going to cut it off straight away.
Yeah.
But I didn't. That's how I got burnt from it, basically.
Yeah.
So there was multiple red flags that were being thrown in my face. But I was just ignoring them, thinking that things could change.
Yeah, you kept moving the goalposts.
Yeah, basically. And God will warn you time and time again.
Yeah.
This is not for you. If you don't listen, then you get burnt, basically. But yeah, being equally yoked and understanding that the other person is on the same track as you, even though they may be saying that they are and they're not, you have to try and find a way to kind of either end it there or have a conversation deep enough for them to really understand where you're coming from. That wasn't happening. There was a lot of spiritual warfare within that relationship. I'll tell you how it ended, basically. It ended with me having to file a restraining order on the person. I think the police said it was the worst case they've ever seen.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, for me personally, that experience really affected me. Like,
yeah, for sure.
In a crazy way. Luckily, my sisters were supporting me at that time.
But yeah, how did that affect you kind of like mentally then?
Yeah, it was a lot. Like,
yeah, of course. For it to have to get to that stage really shows like how bad it was.
How bad it is. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing I don't like to do, I don't like to speak bad about people. But yeah, I was so anxious, like constantly having to manage a business at the same time as well as someone else.
And while it's going south.
And then trying to manage someone else. And technically it shouldn't be my responsibility, but managing someone else's feelings as well. But then that person not having any introspection on who they are, how they're behaving is crazy. But then also to magnify that issue, that person being kind of crazy themselves as well, if that makes sense. So it was just a lot. I mean, I didn't actually tell my wider family until it really got really bad, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
So I was kind of dealing with this
by yourself,
which is something that I do a lot.
Okay.
Which I need to work on.
Do you think that's from childhood and not actually being able to really discuss your emotions?
Absolutely. As I was saying earlier, being alone all the time with my sisters being together most of the time. Me by myself, I've only kind of really dealt with stuff on my own. And it's kind of worked for me very well, to be fair.
Yeah.
Obviously, situations like this, it hasn't. And I felt a lot better sharing it with my family, even though it was really difficult to do that.
Yeah.
Like things obviously worked a lot better, that everyone else was kind of aware of the situation.
Yeah, thank God.
But as I was saying, it was weird because like this is the first time being like 20, 23, 22, actually having an open conversation like that with my parents.
Wow.
Feeling weird because it's never happened before.
It's not what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something for myself whenever the time comes for me to have children, just to have very, very open communication because, yeah, it's something I didn't have myself personally. But yeah, just to summarize the story, really, it was extremely toxic. A lot of spiritual warfare took place with that. It's crazy because the relationship I had after that was kind of similar as well.
Wow.
The ending.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a lot of learning for me. It was a huge learning curve for me.
Yeah.
Basically.
Did you feel like God was trying to teach you a lot throughout those experiences?
I think so, 100%. I also feel like the devil has a way of bringing counterfeits towards you as well. And I think I'm someone that has had to learn things the hard way a few times. But obviously, that's where wisdom comes to some extent.
Yeah.
Actually experiencing something, if that makes sense. So, yeah, despite that, God still has the grace and mercy to bring something good from situations like that. And yeah, I'm grateful for the experience, even though it was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, still grateful.
What do you think like were the biggest things that he taught you throughout those processes, those experiences?
I would say it's being genuine and true to yourself, personally.
Truth? I feel like it's the topic at the minute, because I feel like being truthful, not just to other people, but to ourselves, is like the most important thing.
100%.
Because when we're truthful to ourselves, we like, God already knows what we're thinking. Yeah. But the moment we're truthful to ourselves and then can be truthful to God, I think it really changes the trajectory moving forward.
I completely agree. But it's also, I'd say, understanding that certain things happen in your life for a reason, obviously. Even though bad things happen to us, it's still a part of a learning curve, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, obviously, we speak about prophecy, things that are supposed to happen and will happen. I've started to think that certain trials that I experienced were meant to happen, if that makes sense. So there was no way of me preventing this from happening, no matter how bad it was. So yeah, I think it's just accepting that certain things happen for a reason, obviously.
For sure, and that God always has a plan.
Basically.
Yeah. So do you feel like it's helped a lot moving forward now that you can start to have, slowly but surely, start to have conversations with your family? Yeah,
I'd say so. I mean, I'm already doing that with my sisters, of course. With my parents, it's slightly different. But yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think my sisters have had a similar experiences, but they're obviously growing up as well. But I think it all kind of starts with someone taking that step to kind of have that conversation with the parents, if that makes sense. Because it would obviously only improve from that point.
Yeah, exactly. It's slowly shattering the wall, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, as I was saying, in terms of like vetting people in relationships as well, I think I've learned a lot about that. And what to kind of look for and what I want personally as well.
Yes.
And not to just go off certain things. Obviously being a man, we're obviously very visual, so that plays a part as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of just having a more mature feel and thought process, basically, when it comes to those things like that. Obviously having no brothers as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of weird speaking to your sister about someone, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so, for sure.
Yeah, but I'm grateful because like I've grown so much in that aspect of my life. Especially understanding women and stuff like that.
Yeah, and maybe like approaching the whole dating thing more logically.
Logically, yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, I feel like it's so easy, both men and women, to go visually, but I think especially when we're talking about our kingdom spouse, that we have to be logical as well, 100%. You know? Because there are going to be certain things like not being equally yoked or like morals. There's just so many aspects that we have to be like, okay, we've got to get through this, you know?
Yeah. Even down to like the nitty gritty stuff like spiritual warfare. Like, you can't be with someone who doesn't know how to pray for you.
Yes.
In a situation like that.
For sure.
I need to be with someone that can understand obviously what I'm going through and actually be able to counteract what maybe we're both going through, what I'm going through, to the point where, you know, it's that way, if that makes sense. So that level of understanding, obviously being equally yoked, is definitely needed for I think families, relationships is a key target for the devil. Trying to break up that sort of bonding community.
Yeah.
The Bible is basically all about the family, and once that family is broken, like so many other things stem off from that. So, yeah, it's really important.
No, for sure. Do you have a lot of friendships, like male friendships in the church?
Yeah. So obviously like mentors.
Nice.
You obviously have elders and pastors, obviously.
Yeah. Do you still go to your parents' church?
Yeah. So my dad has a church plant, so it's basically a community church that he started up and it's kind of grown.
Wow.
With members of the community. So that's pretty good when it comes to obviously sharing who God is.
Nice.
I think most of the time that we spend there is just literally outreach, so ministering to other people in creative ways. But I feel like being a church attender is slightly dying off for me, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I kind of want to be more outside on the front line, if that makes sense. So whether I'm feeding the homeless or volunteering on the days that I should be at church, I personally feel like that is more use of my time, if that makes sense. Basically I should be doing that every day of the week, basically. But I feel like as many opportunities that I can get to obviously serve others, I should take it. Because Jesus was out here healing people.
Yeah.
Feeding people. So I feel like we should follow after his footsteps, even when it comes towards attending church.
I think it's also important in where in your walk,
yeah.
because as I also think it's important to make sure that you're being fed into enough and making sure we're spending time with him, because it's so easy to then serve and actually forget while we're doing all of this, you know. And I think it's so easy to do that, because even like down to, okay, we walk past a homeless person, we're gonna give, but it's like, remember why we're giving. We're not just giving for them because we need to give,
exactly,
you know. And I think that's important in terms of the walk, not just serving because we're supposed to serve.
100%. I mean, God took time out of his day to go and pray in the mountain.
Exactly.
Like, he used to say no. Like, I know it's crazy to think that Jesus said no to people, but he did as well. And I feel like if you're allowing your time and energy to be drained, but not refilling it, like you were saying, you can kind of get to a point where you either burn out or you're not filled up with enough Holy Spirit.
And actually your relationship with him is quite distant.
100%.
100%.
Speaking about relationships in general, those experiences that I've had, obviously with regards to my business, relationships, family, we're all kind of working on my character as a person. And then recently speaking, coming towards the end of this trial with my business and the issues that are going wrong, it really, really taught me that God was in control and that he was teaching me to have more faith in him rather than looking at the problem and trying to figure out how to solve it myself. I'm a very practical person, so I like to just get things sorted there and then.
For sure.
But yeah, it was really challenging because I had to really, it was all spiritual. Like I was fasting literally every single day of the week for a month. I lost so much weight as well, but just that amount of time of fasting and spending time with God really opened my eyes to so many things. And I've just continued that sort of formula for my life right now. I was thinking a lot clearer. I was being isolated, not doing it myself, but people basically moving out my life. Everything that God kind of wanted for me kind of happened. And if we speak back to my previous relationship, that was kind of the deciding point of me understanding that something really was happening here in terms of my life. So the day before that, I was planning to end it with my previous girlfriend. I had the craziest spiritual attack.
Really?
Like, it happened 3 times.
Wow.
In the night. And yeah, like it was like something I've never ever experienced when it came to it. Like, obviously people feel like they've been held down by weight. I felt like I was literally being sucked out, if that makes sense. So Drained, yeah. So that happened 3 times.
Wow.
And then, I woke up in the night. I should have remembered the verse that God told me to say, but it was basically saying that something about your enemies are preparing to try and basically take you out. But I'm the Lord who's obviously there to protect you. But yeah, that was a really interesting experience for me. And it's also obviously brought me closer towards God. Those experiences are always nice, but it's a part of life.
For sure, and they're important for us, I think, to move forward. Which is why you said, like, every trial is actually, like, it all happens for a reason.
100%.
Because I always think it's necessary, you know? Because the person that we were then couldn't actually be the person that we need to be today.
Exactly that.
You know?
Exactly that.
So then, obviously, the relationship's ended, and your business is still ongoing. Was it the fast that really made the breakthrough then?
100%, yeah. So that breakthrough season was about 3 months.
Wow.
So I was waiting for a while, like mentally.
It was hard. Yeah.
That was the hardest part of my life to this day. To be fair. Like emotionally, like I was in a bad place, but so I wasn't making basically any money because of my site. Running out my savings, feeling depressed at home, people basically coming out of my life, and obviously feeling as though there's nothing that I can do to kind of change it as well. And then obviously fasting on top of that kind of adds to the thing. Not being able to eat. So, yeah, it was difficult for a good 3 months. I literally felt like God had left me. There was times in my room where I was like, no, I'm not really on this no more. I wouldn't pray for like a whole day or 2 days.
Yeah.
Reading my Bible, be upset with God.
You felt like you were warring with him.
Yeah. And it was crazy because I was literally going through the story of Job throughout that whole season.
Okay. That's timely, isn't it?
This is weird. Of all books, I'm reading Job. So I generally felt like I was experiencing everything that Job was experiencing in my own personal life.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just manifesting like right in front of me. But yeah, that was the lowest I've ever been. It came towards God himself, being someone who would probably think that I would never ever denounce my faith, would never say that I don't believe you're there, God, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a very difficult experience for me, and God really showed up for me in the end. Turned literally things around in like a day.
Wow.
So, just to explain, I got some new contracts with like footballers to do merch with them.
Amazing.
Obviously working with Gets. Obviously this app as well. So yeah, I'm just grateful that this experience didn't end there. And I always feel like when you are in the midst of a trial or some sort of situation, you always feel like there's no way out whatsoever.
Yeah, there's no light at the end.
Literally. I was just trying to encourage myself. That's one thing that you kind of have to do really, like actually speak to yourself. Obviously the story when it comes towards the story about Jesus being tempted in the Bible, 40 days, 40 nights. Every single response he gave the devil when the devil was talking lies to him was God's word. So I feel like you have to speak God's word into your life to basically remove certain things.
100%. Yeah, because we stand firm on knowing who he is.
Exactly. But it was a crazy mental battle. I always feel as though that whatever like you're thinking negatively about yourself is basically the opposite. So I used to think that when I'm hearing thoughts like, oh, you're never going to get the business back up and running, your reputation's been destroyed, or God doesn't care about your situation. Me personally, I want to be straight. I think it's demons just speaking to you.
100% agree with you.
And whatever they're saying can never ever be the truth. So it must be a lie, which means that the opposite of what they're saying is actually what is going to happen. Because they wouldn't waste time trying to tell you something that's not true. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So
they're trying to deter you so much.
Yeah,
you know?
Obviously their main sort of action is to prevent or slow down the blessing that's already been sent.
Yeah.
So when you are experiencing those little voices in your mind, that means the opposite of what they're saying is actually on route to you already. So yeah, that's something I had to kind of like understand during that time.
For sure.
And yeah, God showed me exactly what he wants me to be doing right now. I haven't really got through it, but you know, it's a working testimony.
And I feel like you were saying, like it is literally just the enemy on attack, and it's so important to be like, when he does that, where it's like, no, I am a child of God, and I know I'm strong because God told me I'm strong, and I just think it's so important to that's why it's so important to know our word, because that's when the battle comes, you know.
The power of life and death is in the tongue, basically. Amen. So anything you'll say to yourself, it better be something that is given life. Otherwise, you can expect things to be going wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
There's so many principles that God has kind of laid out in our lives, in His teaching, in His Word, basically, that can basically support us during these times of crisis. Basically, the battle's already won, more or less. Basically, has, but God came to die for us. So every single fight that we're fighting has already been won. The devil's defeated. Yeah. There's nothing that can basically block our blessings apart from ourselves. So any sort of attack that we have is all about changing the way that we think to deny what God has already set aside for us. Yeah, so, for sure. It's all mental. Yeah, it is. No, but it really is, because the enemy will come for us night and day. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's so important to remember God's character. And it's like He would never want us to feel unworthy, or never want us to feel like nothing, or never want us to feel weak, or be confused, because God is not a God of confusion, you know. It's absolutely. Like all of these things again, which goes back to knowing Him, you know. We have to know Him so we know that it's not Him sending. 100%. And I feel like you also need the right people around you as well for that, because 100%. There's a lot of people that can have opinions on certain things in life, but if they're giving you support or the counsel that you have is not of God, then you're going to also find yourself in situations where you know, I'm not thinking of myself, someone else is thinking for me.
Yeah.
But the source of their thoughts is not something of God. So if you surround yourself with people who are also of liking the mind when it comes towards God, then you'll find yourself in a situation where the counsel that you have and that the seeking is good. Back in the day when the kings, like King Solomon, King David, their counsel was wise enough for them to give them counsel to make decisions on things which were of God. So we should also reflect the same sort of process.
For sure, which is why I think it's important to be like equally yoked in friendships as well. It's so important because then you know that you are seeking the correct counsel.
100%. But I think it's difficult these days because society is making everyone kind of be a bit more focused on spending time on themselves. Solo trips is a bad thing, not a bad thing.
Of course.
But I feel like we're kind of being pushed to kind of spend time by ourselves, do things on our own. I think we're lacking a lot of community, basically. And the reason why I say that is a simple case. Like if you look at clothing brands, for example, all the top brands that are performing right now, there's one thing that sticks out for them all, which is building community behind their brand. So when it comes towards religion or following Christ, it is also building a community of followers. As I was saying about the point of family, like the devil hates family. It's such a strong thing to have that even if you take it outside of just the Bible in the clothing brand, something like that, it still has the same positive impact.
It's community is so important and can really just help the whole journey, I think. For everyone. And also I feel like a lot of the time he can use our friendships to make us see ourselves
100%.
and bring things forward that need to be addressed through our friendships. That's definitely been a season I've been in. But it's important because also we can bear each other's crosses through that, you know.
Of course. It's all about finding support from others around you, really.
For sure.
Like we're all kind of on the similar journey. There's always something that someone can share with you that's going to support you. So I think we just need more community, more engagement amongst each other. Because division and like breaking things up is all about what the enemy is about. Kill, steal, and destroy.
For sure. Wow. Right now, obviously, you're still on a journey with this, but like right now, what's life looking like?
Life is good. I've just basically come out of this season of hardship, I'd say. I've now walked into a season where things are kind of just being dropped on my table. So
thank you, Jesus.
I am honestly just so grateful for the fact that I've obviously made it this far. Obviously, being in that period of time, you know, you have thoughts of, you know, obviously ending not only your life, unfortunately, but just anything that you're involved in, like either quitting my business or closing it and stuff like that.
Wow, you really just wanted to shut everything down.
Like I was dealing with so much that I just wanted everything to just stop. And no matter what that looked like, I was basically aiming to do that. But speaking now, I've moved into a season where, you know, things are just popping up left, right, and centre. Opportunities left, right, and centre. I'm really kind of moving in a season of blessing, really, to be fair. And it's definitely not what I imagined it to be as well, because I thought my season of blessing would be me moving to Dubai or something. Something like that. But it's actually fulfilling stuff like working with homeless people, for example. But then also having the ability to work with like a music artist or footballer. But I feel like I've kind of just started my next season of life in terms of where God's taking me. I think a lot of my previous years was just character building, changing the way I thought, changing my focus. I'm really being all in for God, basically. And I think I'm at a stage where I have a base and a secure base that is kind of funding and fueling like me as a man, basically.
Wow.
A man of God, essentially, as well. And things are just building off that, basically. So.
Wow, amazing. Do you feel like you're called to stay at the moment? Obviously, you were saying that you thought it would look like going to Dubai.
I'm called to stay, to be honest. I mean, it's all a case of like where God wants to take me right now.
For sure.
Like, even like little things in life, like people you meet, people you come into contact with, you never really know what God has planned for certain things. So it's all about like going with the flow to some extent.
For sure.
Being open to what God is trying to teach you through any season of life. Because there's always literally something around the corner.
For sure. Really letting him take the reins.
But but then also being humble enough to obviously see your vision, but not try and run ahead of God. Like staying the course, and just having that integrity and humbleness, basically, to be in your current season. Because everyone's trying to run outside of their lane.
We want to take our own reins. That's why we love the control, don't we?
We're impatient.
It's
all about obedience and following God. But we're all humans at the end of the day.
Sure.
No one's perfect, so it's a work in progress, really.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing with me today, and really allowing us to see God through your life. Is there any last words or encouragement that you have?
I would say basically just to focus on understanding yourself, and understanding the enemy to some extent, and how you try and basically manipulate the way you think. I think our minds are so powerful, and allowing just basically the Holy Spirit to dwell within you so that you can have a proper thought process, and speaking words of life to yourself. But one thing I'd say is focus on putting God first in everything you do, but then also focusing on self-care as well. Because I feel like self-care, working on yourself essentially, basically. So whether it's going to the gym, reading a book, doing these things to improve who you are as a person will motivate you to use what you're obviously developing to help other people as well. But at the end of the day, we're all here to kind of serve. So self-care and putting God first too.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for being here.
No worries, it's been a pleasure.